Benford, is it your first time in Nantes, and what are your feelings about the Utopia?
This is my first time in Nantes, though I've been coming to France since 1956. And I like the town very much. It's very, very well thought through. I have a great affection for France. After all, without France, the American Revolution would have failed. And you also gave us the Statue of Liberty. France is the only major European nation that we have not actually fought, which explains the trouble we have with the French, because to me, we are so similar that our disputes are basically like those that occur in a marriage, but the marriage goes on. Mm-hmm. Whereas we fought 2 wars against the British, 2 wars against the Spanish, and the Mexicans, 2 against the Germans, a big long one against the Soviets, and also, let's not forget, the Italians in the second one. So you see, we're the only ones we haven't had a problem with on the battlefield.
So now we talk.
Yes,
and we argue.
Right, it's true. I mean, you have to remember history.
We know you are a great scientist, and you have many other occupations. But how do you discover you wanted to write stories?
Writing is like sex. You know what you like. And I knew from about the age 14 that I actually liked writing. I discovered that in an English class, though I do not recommend that people take courses in literature, because they seem to be designed to destroy your interest in literature by making you learn it instead of enjoy it. So, in fact, for that reason, I never took a course in literature at a university level. I learned that you could take them by examination and avoid going to the class. But I did not begin writing professionally until I was in graduate school in physics at the University of California. And I wrote some short stories, and I was extremely lucky. I sold, I think, the 4th short story I wrote, and I've sold everything I've written since. I saw early that the major thing I should do is write about science, because there's so little fiction about how scientists work, think, and invent. So instead of writing endless novels about suburban infidelity and all the other kind of existentialist despair, blah, 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 I wrote about what I knew about. I think every writer should write what they know. That's why most writers should actually write as a hobby, the way I do. I've just been extremely lucky.
And when you were a kid or a teenager, did you read writers like Jules Verne or Wells, or what kind of writers did you like?
I was a huge Jules Verne, who, after all, invented major modern science fiction, and also hard science fiction. I was just in the Jules Verne Museum yesterday, and there are these diagrams. He worked out the orbits for going to the moon. There's lots of calculation. He apparently did not know calculus, but he knew algebra, a word we get from the Arabs. And he said about Wells that, well, it's all very well to write a novel about going to the moon using miracles, but where is this substance, carverite, that is supposed to be anti-gravity material? Which is a good point. He did it the way he thought might work. We now know that it would have turned the passengers into ketchup. But it was a way of getting to the moon. It's the first European novel, I believe, which ever featured only American characters.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And he wrote it in the middle of the American Civil War.
Oh, sorry.
Suddenly this room is popping.
Yeah, I think.
Put a sign on it.
And you said you sold your first text easily, quickly, but now when you're writing, you have an agent. how do you choose your subject? Do you have an idea? Do you make a plan and you write after, or what is your way to proceed?
Well, first, I never write anything if I don't enjoy it. That's really important. I think there's nothing worse for writing than what many professionals go through. They force themselves to write because they need to eat. But to me, writing is like sex. If it doesn't feel good, it's not right. It's always been a hobby. It's true, I have a New York agent, some foreign agents, a Hollywood agent, but I just use them to take care of the business because I actually have a job as a scientist, which I spend most of my time on. So I have some rules. I only write when I feel like writing, but I always have an idea. I always have some vague idea of who the characters are. I may not know how it ends. I just enjoy discovering a novel, particularly by writing it. If you try to overplan work, then it becomes stale for me.
And you also put a lot of your personal research on some of your texts.
Yes, I'm basically lazy. So I've written novels based on the scientific issues I was working on. I've written many papers about the center of the galaxy, trying to solve the problems of these enormous luminous structures, hundreds of light years long, that are unique in the sky. I've been lucky again because the models that I introduced are the only ones still surviving the data. But that's what got me interested in writing novels set at the galactic center, because I had already started writing way back in 1974 a novel about the possibility, which I think is quite plausible, that a lot of the life in the galaxy may be machine intelligence that survives mere fragile beings like us. And so they, yeah, right. Just, why is everybody damn go? It's amazing, isn't it? Oh well. Anyway, I'll cave up where I was. There's a good possibility, I think, that life in the galaxy is dominated by very long-lived machine intelligence instead of fragile creatures like us. And so I thought, when we blunder out onto the galactic stage, beginning with a novel of mine called In the Ocean of Night, we may find out that we are essentially pests, rats in the wall, and viewed with scorn by advanced intelligences that see us as a problem, not as somebody glorious we want to communicate with. And the center of the galaxy is a very dangerous place for people like us. So, of course, that's where I sent my people, to find out what the machine intelligences are doing there, because there's lots of energy resources at the center of the galaxy. That's why it's dangerous for us and good for them.
So you think a possibility of intelligence in a machine is existing?
Well, yes, it's the old dream of machines that are smarter than we are. So far, they're very hard to make because we're really not very smart at doing it. But it's an interesting prospect. It may come about because we will just get so much computing power that we can overcome the hurdles. Though I have my doubts. I really do have my doubts.
And what could be the next step?
Oh, well, the next step now? Well, the thing we're going to see in the next 20 years is the smart room, smart city, so much embedded data processing in rooms that the rooms will know who's in them, what they want. You walk out on the street and advertisements will offer themselves to you through various methods. The whole city will know who you are, what you're doing. It makes me a bit paranoid, actually, but It's already happened. In London, they have video cameras with artificial, with software that analyzes and looks for faces, things like that. That's just the beginning. And the more what we call the mommy state grows, the more they will use this. Mommy always wants to know what you're doing.
We know. In a way, your work, your research, and your hobby, writing, isn't it? Aren't they? Sorry, a way to escape from Earth?
Well, that's always been a dream. The Europeans, a bit over 500 years ago, finally got out of Europe, and they really enjoyed it. So it's natural to think that it will also be fun to leave the Earth. But there's a deeper issue, too. I don't believe we can sustain the kind of society we have made without the resources of the entire solar system. We're running out of metals. We need energy that does not pollute the atmosphere. And also you gain a perspective by going above the atmosphere. Remember Apollo 8? That single picture of the Earth above the moonscape showed everyone that we live in this very, very wonderful, special place, and that nothing in the solar system is as good as this. It's the essential environmentalist photograph. And it came about entirely, you might say, by accident. The space program was not supposed to be an environmental movement, but it gave us an environmental moment. We can't solve the problems of this planet without using the perspectives and the resources from outside the planet.
Did you regret that men didn't go on Mars, for example? Actually.
Well, so far we haven't, but the biggest issue science can answer in the solar system is, did life begin on Mars? Does it survive below the surface? And does it resemble us? There's a real possibility that we are actually Martians. That life began there because Mars cooled off first, and we know it had a wet phase. We can see it in the river valleys. Did the incoming meteors knock some of that early life off and it fell into the new oceans of Earth and start life here? We just don't know. There's only one way to find out, and that's to go to Mars. But I served on the Mars Outpost Committee for NASA in the 1990s that looked at how we can solve these problems. And the robotics specialists who testified before us said that they might be able to build a robot that could autonomously descend down, say, thermal vents or caves on Mars. They might be able to do that in 30 years. Well, we don't have 30 years. We can't be sure the space program will exist in 30 years. So we better start trying to do it now. Worldwide, governments spend for non-military space purposes, independent of business, and so on, about $30 billion a year. If you spent half of that money on a manned expedition to Mars, you could go to Mars in 10 years. That's very clear. Everyone agrees on that. So you see, we're spending the money anyway, but we're mostly duplicating the effort of each other. So the Chinese are now developing the things that we had 40 years ago, which is a stupid waste. If we collaborated, say 6 or 7 nations, we could go to Mars in a decade, and it would be the great adventure of the 21st century. The first humans to leave the space of the near Earth, really near Earth.
And do you really know or believe that the man is wise enough to do that? Wise enough?
Well, if governments were remotely as smart as people seem to think they are, they would stop wasting most of their money in space and collaborate. I agree that's asking a lot, because I'm an American, I distrust government. But you see, everyone seems to think that we are the Columbus of space. My fear is that we are actually the Leif Eriksons of space. That we will eventually falter and fail because we face enormous problems in this century. Pollution, warming, poverty, lots of big problems. It's not crazy to think that we might regard 20 years from now the space program as a luxury. Well, it is a luxury. From the point of view of the bulk of humanity, the space program is a careless luxury. So we might just kill the space program. When the retirement programs want too much, they'll kill the space program. Then, 200 years from now, when things have changed completely, somebody else may go into space. And we'll be the Leif Eriksons, and that somebody else will be Columbus, except this Columbus will know where they're going. You see, the reason the analogy breaks down is that Columbus didn't know where he was going. He thought he was going to India. But we can see Mars in the night sky.
One last question. You work and you write with many other writers.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage that? And was it different from a writer to another?
Every writer is different. You know, writing is a lonely business. And I like collaborating with people because you get new ideas. But also scientists collaborate enormously. The great majority of all scientific papers have more than one author. So I've written novels, I think, with 6 or 7 people. I enjoy it. Science fiction is a literature of ideas, unlike the other genres. I mean, fantasy is about nostalgia, mysteries are about restoring order in society, westerns are about a world that no longer exists, in which right and wrong are easy to find out about. But science fiction is about ideas. So you have more ideas if you have more than one mind working on them. So that's a good reason to collaborate, aside from the fact that it's just plain fun.
And the last one, what is actually your project of writing?
Now?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of writing a novel, but I don't know what it's about yet. I just finished a nonfiction book with Elizabeth Malartre called Beyond Human, which is about the prospect for the enhancement of the human body. It's nonfiction. And how we should deal with it socially over the next 30 to 40 years. Because it's going to happen. It's happening right now. And the robots are getting much better, too. 30 years from now, it will be common to see robots doing jobs around everywhere. 30 years from now, people will use all kinds of artificial devices we don't have now. But there's an old history of this. I mean, I'm wearing glasses, right? This is an artificial enhancement. And the reason it doesn't seem extraordinary is that it's old.